So, full disclosure, Donald and I worked together at Cargo Magazine over 10 years ago.
He was actually my boss, but he wasn't old enough to drink. It was the strangest thing. I've never worked for anybody so young. It was that long ago.
Yeah, I was your boss, but it was the only person I didn't get to hire. So I got the job, and they said, Donald Robertson's going to be working here before you get here, which sounds like a nightmare, but it ended up being the biggest gift. So we worked together on 20 issues of Cargo Magazine.
In our arranged career marriage.
Exactly. The magazine failed, but the friendship endures.
Exactly.
And here I am to grill you with my very nerdy list of journalistic questions. So let's get started. I didn't realize this until I was reading your bio, that you are an art school dropout.
Yes. I did not like starving. Starving was never a big thing with me. And I was in art college, and we had these life drawings that were lying all over the floor. It was at the Ontario College of Art. And I was like, people, we could sell this stuff. We could make a lot of money. We could date and buy clothes and get food. And they were like, what? I was like, we could sell these things. And that word sell in a fine art college was enough for them to basically ask me to leave.
So you were kicked out for being too commercial.
I was the most commercial fine artist, probably in the history of OCA, and left.
Can you be too commercial these days as an artist? I mean, that seems like the
this
goal
is the
for
thing.
every
It's
artist
all
today.
about whether you like starving or not. I've never liked starving. Right? I never liked starving. I always liked having cash in my pocket. Student loans just didn't make any sense to me. And then I never had a bad year. Like, I was just like hustling right away because I almost had more to prove.
Was there anyone from your class that you're still in touch with today that's
Yes.
successful?
Instagram, there were a number of people that I did go to school with that have popped back up, and it's great to see, and it's great to revisit them because the people were great. The starving people were all great.
Are any of them commercially successful?
That I don't know. They seem happy, and
So
they all
that's a
have
no.
iPhones. So
That's a no. If you don't know that they're commercially successful, they're not commercially
okay,
successful.
that's true. That's true.
So you left but returned to Canada to launch and create Mac.
So I was very lucky to work with the founders of Mac. So as a young painter-illustrator, the founders of Mac, Frank and Frank, were looking for somebody who would do, what we couldn't do in Canada was hire a supermodel. So what we did was we just sort of like painted all faces, all ages, all races, and it just sort of became our thing. There wasn't really a supermodel in Canada to be had, and so I just used to draw everything for Frank and Frank, and it kind of clicked, and it just sort of became a thing very quickly.
How did Viva Glam become such a big
So Viva
campaign?
Glam, again, because we were Canadian and because we didn't know better, we didn't really realize that in the American beauty industry, giving stuff away for free was sort of unthinkable. So it was just something we thought at the time was the right thing to do, and we did it. And it was just sort of a pure reaction to something that was going on, and it's now sort of the backbone of MAC Cosmetics.
One of the questions I'm asked as an editor of a magazine is there one person you would love to see on the cover of InStyle? Is there one person who slipped through your hands? Is there one ambassador for Viva Glam that you'd love to see or that was approached that you still would love to get and be a representative of Viva Glam?
I think the thing about Viva Glam is it's always the next person because the next person brings as much attention to the cause and to the fundraising. So it's not so much who, but it's who can bring in the most bang for the buck. Because it really is, in the end, about making money for the cause.
So I don't think people think of you as Canadian. I don't think people even know that. I mean, I've known that for years. I'm part Canadian. There's so many Canadians in the fashion and magazine industry. When you moved here in 1989, did being a Canadian give you some sort of outside perspective on the fashion and print industry? You said while you were doing Mac, it certainly did. Has that helped you in any way?
Totally. I've always sort of felt like an observer and like a guest at a party that hasn't been tossed out. So, and I've been able to move through different sort of like trends and different sort of like groups of people sort of unnoticed. And I've literally morphed myself into, the person that I needed to be at that point in time. So it's a morphing ability that I think a lot of Canadians have because we can sort of like invade a culture and sort of find our way through it without sort of being bigger than life when we first come in, you know?
So you're the Zelig of
Of
fashion.
Totally. Actually, my boss right now has this, before he sends me in on John Dempsey, he calls it send in the Canadian.
Is it like the canary? If
Like,
you don't die,
I am the canary. He's like, send in the Canadian. That's his thing.
And what's the litmus test?
It's just sort of, we can appreciate all things American, and we sort of approach everything with this sort of like, wow approach, as opposed to somebody who's sort of seen it all.
So a lack of jadedness. If you still think it's cool.
We're very pure.
So you came and worked at Condé Nast for a long time. You worked at Glamour. You worked at Cargo. Do you read print magazines?
No, I do not read anything.
You don't read anything?
I don't read. It's just like my eyesight has gotten so bad, I can't read unless it's backlit. I'll read comments. I can't even do my kids' homework.
What appealed to you about magazines at the time? I mean, you spent a good portion of your career working in print, working to create, pretty iconic images and establishing those brands.
I literally needed a green card bad because at the time when I arrived here, it was really, really hard. I needed a green card, and magazines just sort of made sense, and it was fast, and it was like I liked making pictures, and I liked traveling the world, and I liked sort of like seeing things and going to shows and that sort of thing. It was great, and it was like heyday. But I don't really miss it. I much prefer how global Instagram is and how fast it is. I can't wait for a month to go by for something to come out.
So before you really leveraged Instagram, you had already returned to the world of beauty. We heard that you're working at Estee Lauder, doing this incredible sort of roving portfolio where you work on all these brands. What appeals to you so much about the world of beauty, and what have you learned about what women want globally? Are there a lot of similarities, or do different women around the world want different things? How do you speak to women visually?
Okay, well, the first point is, remember my initial comment about never wanting to be broke? Women will buy cosmetics before they buy food. If the entire world runs out of cash, women will somehow get to those products. I've never had a bad year. That was the awesome thing about the beauty industry. I keep telling my sons now, go into beauty, and they just stare at me sort of sideways. I'm like, fine, don't go into beauty. Have a bad year.
Your infant sons?
No, my 16-year-old. My 16-year-old, I'm like, buddy, you need to go into beauty. You'll never have a bad year. It's a completely and totally recession-proof industry, so that's first of all. Second of all, I like the game of it. I like the hustle, and I like the squeeze in. I got to Bobbi Brown, it was great. I had the best time. And we needed to do something gigantic, and we needed to do something that was going to cause a lot of commotion fast, but we didn't have a ton of money. So if we paid for somebody to come on board, it sort of had to take care of it itself. So we signed Katie Holmes, I think the day before she escaped Scientology. I think in the history of signing a celebrity to a brand, we have never gotten so much free press in our entire lives. It was like spectacular. I just saw Katie Holmes in LA recently, and I was high-fiving her, and I was like, Katie, can you even believe? She couldn't even believe it.
So let's talk Instagram. Okay, so there are many, many people who have millions of followers on Instagram, and we've been told that they get paid to endorse products and leverage these huge audiences, some of which are sold, bought, traded. There was the whole Instagram deflation where people lost their fake followers overnight and the depression happened. You have a healthy number of followers.
Right.
You don't have millions of followers, yet you are one of the few people who's managed to really create a second career, a very lucrative career. Your professors at art school would probably be shaking their heads about how commercial you've been on Instagram. How have you, can you put into words the strategy, though I don't think it was so strategic, how have you managed to leverage Instagram to create what has been this art world phenomenon? But before that, when did you even discover Instagram?
So first thing everybody has to realize, I've always done what I do every day. I've always done it every day. Ariel will tell you, when I worked with Ariel on Cargo Magazine, I would draw out the entire issue, I would draw every cover, I would draw every layout, I would give them to the photographer, I'd give them to the stylist, I'd give them Ariel, I'd say, this is what I'm thinking. I've been drawing every day, every minute of the day for, since I started my career. And then it was just sort of a thing, and then somebody would have a birthday and I would draw them, and somebody would have this and I would draw them. It was just always my thing. And I also think in this day of computer rendering, when everything is so high-tech and everything's so hyper-real, when I draw something really sort of like kind of good but fast, people think like I'm a wizard. It's like I have some kind of wizard skill, and all I'm doing is really sketching, right? And so I've always done it. What happened was I was a big BlackBerry guy, had a BlackBerry my whole career when I was, an email. My kids were like, Dad, you need to get an Instagram, these drawings, you need to put them on Instagram. And so about a year and a half ago, I got an iPhone, and then that was it. Now my kids are like, Dad, look up from your phone, look up. It was just something that just sort of happened organically, but it's not like I changed, it's just the technology changed.
And how did you realize, okay, this is an opportunity to connect with people who love my work, who will buy my work, and I'm going to really kind of cut out every single middleman that there is in the art world. I don't really need an agent initially. I don't need to contact a publicist. I can collaborate. I can create an exhibit. I can really use this as every platform that it is, not just a place to show my work. How did you know that was happening? How did you do that?
Instagram has shifted the power. So whereas most illustrators, and if any of you guys are illustrators know, you would sit and wait for somebody to call to give you an assignment for something that would be inset into the front of a book, and photography sort of took over and hogged everything. So what Instagram is we can set our own stage, and we can make our own rules, and we can kind of call the shots. So literally, while I was sitting in the green room, this drawing I had done of Corinne Rotfeld and Tom Ford as a favor just popped up in V magazine. It's so much easier to call me to draw Corinne and Tom than to get those two together to get them to actually make a picture. Then, 5 minutes after that, these buddies from Canada, Dean and Dan from D Squared, they posted this thing that they had done in Milan of something that I sent over as a high-res scan and was like a monster on the wall. There's just no end to the reach. It's like global reach. I can call the shots. Everything's kind of full bleed on your phone. It's not like anything's inset. And the thing is, photographers make the worst Instagrammers. Have you noticed that? They're not that good. They just sort of post old photos that they took. Whereas all the creative directors and the stylists and the hair people and the makeup people that are making the pictures, their Instagrams are incredible. So I kind of feel like I'm hogging back the pages and the space that photography had taken over for so long.
So you've been dubbed the Warhol of Instagram. I'm not quite sure I understand what that means, but I do know that Warhol revered and reviled pop culture at the same time. You seem to love pop culture and really live in it 24/7. And the connections you have are really organic, right? So you draw a dress of Lupita on Instagram, and she Instagrams it immediately. And that just seems really organic and fun. Is there a bigger commentary happening? Are we not in on the joke? Is there a commentary on consumerism when you do Hermes with Kermit as Kermes? Or is it just a lot of fun?
I kind of look at the whole thing, like when you scroll through my Instagram, as kind of almost like performance art. It's not really so much that I'm an artist as I like to think of myself as an idea guy that can draw. And I think the thing about Andy Warhol was he was basically an idea guy. He had a lot of very clever ideas. And I think that they're just sort of lomming us together, primarily because he started out as a commercial illustrator, which I was, and then he sort of moved it into another sort of higher art plane, which I'm working hard at. And I think it was just the fact that, it's not just about a Jackson Pollock on a canvas. There was always thinking behind his work. and then he would also play off culture. So I find that fascinating. I'm an apostle of his. I've learned a lot from him, and I have no problem with the comparison whatsoever. I think it's complimentary. I should probably get a wig. I'm close to getting a wig.
I think a lot of people are doing the same thing that must have happened when Warhol became huge. So many people have said to me, I'm rummaging through my drawers looking for the sketch that Donald did of me for my birthday 15 or 10 years ago. You once drew for me a doodle on a plastic tablecloth at my house one summer. It's now in a frame. So, anyone who knew you about 10, 15 years ago is very happy that they knew you.
Yeah.
You have a new book called Fashion is Nuts. And I'm going to try and say nuts as many times as possible for those who are listening in the room next to their computer.
Right.
So nuts.
Okay.
And literally, you have created iconic fashion people.
Right.
Grace Coddington, Riccardo Tisci, you name them, out of walnuts. It's pretty nuts. You've had them photographed.
Right.
You've created a limited edition book.
Yeah.
It's going to be it's been sold. It's had book parties. It's going to be a Colette. There's postcards. There's buttons. I mean, this is pretty Warholian.
Right.
Why are you so drawn to the fashion industry? I mean, aside from the fact that it's nuts.
Right. I think that these are iconic people in our lives, recognizable iconic people that are global. It plays global. And the other thing, too, is you have to kind of give yourself parameters. You have to kind of work within like a tight world. And so I just chose fashion to be my sort of world that I work within. And I sort of push out past it if the World Cup comes or if there's something sort of like hidden. But I really like the fact that these people have become so iconic and that they're so easy to recognize. And it's just something that's like, they're almost like cartoon characters to me. And I just have like they're also like very nice, and they don't like send lawyers after me. Like they're sort of in on it too. But it just is something that we're used to seeing, and so we're sort of like warm to the fact when we sort of see them in different interpretations.
So yesterday you posted on Instagram this picture, and you said for 25 minutes at least, you and I were going to try and stay off our phones.
I know.
I had to leave my phone 3 rooms down.
I know. The phone.
And I'm curious. I know exactly what I'm going to do when this is over. Look at how many people tweeted about this. Hopefully a lot. Hopefully all positive. I'm wondering, what does Donald Robertson do when he gets his phone back in his hand? What are the first things you do when you get your phone?
Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is check the weather to see if my flight's going to get out, because I have like a 7 o'clock flight to Paris, and then the weather is saying ice pelts. What are ice pelts, right? So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing is I'm going to call my 16-year-old son, who texted me just before I came up here, and just 2 words, yellow pants. I'm going to call him, tell him to go screw himself. So that's what I'm going to do, right? And then I'm going to check and see who and what's going on my Instagram, because like I said, I can tell what parts of the world are waking up based on my comments. Like literally, I can go through the day, like early in the morning, it's all like, g'day matey, it's like all Australia. And then I literally know how the sun moves across the earth now based on Instagram comments.
So speaking of texting, we texted yesterday in preparation for this conversation, and I said...
After I whomped him in Words with Friends, which he then said is now called Words with Used to Be Friends.
Yeah, like, I'm just not patient enough for Words with Friends. I'm like, send. Send. You're too patient. So anyway, you beat me on one game. But then you texted me and you said you wanted to talk about this phrase, think outside the box, which in and of itself is so annoying and so overused. And then I thought, well, you're kind of emblematic of that, but you are claiming to be just the opposite, that you think inside the box. Can you talk about that for
Yes. Anybody who's trying to make themselves into something, or anybody that's trying to create a world that they own, if somebody says to you, just think outside the box, just ignore them, like turn away. What everybody needs to do, if you want to do this for a living, is you need to make a box. You need to put a box around you, and you need to pick your color. and you need to pick your typeface, and you need to pick your materials that you work with, and you need to pick the people that you like, and you need to create your box. Because then once you have your box, like take Jeremy Scott, for instance. His box is just sort of like nutty stuff. But within his box, he's been very, very clear, and then he ended up getting Moschino. He didn't leave his box by going to Moschino, but what he did was he just made his box bigger. And now he's a thing, and he's a phenomenal thing, and he's very, very clear. And nothing drives me crazier when they say to me, when you're working on a brand, just think outside the box. It's the opposite.
Who else really does that well as a big brand?
So as a really big brand, I think Wes Anderson is a classic. He doesn't even change the people in his box. Like the people, they're the same people, almost in the same parts from movie to movie. That is classic. Keep it all in the same box. I think Pharrell is doing a phenomenal job about creating a box and staying within it. And then I think when people start to lose it a little bit is when they go out of their box or they start trying to borrow from somebody else's box and then they get panicky and then they lose it. Jenna Lyons, did I say Jenna Lyons? I also think Jenna Lyons does a very, very good job about keeping it tight but in a box and creating a world for herself. With and you can almost picture her typefaces, her colors, her thinking, her models. She's created a real world for herself.
So you talked about picking your medium and picking what it is you work with. And whenever I say that I've worked with you or you've worked with InStyle or I know you, people always say, oh my God, you're a genius, or is he a savant? Is there... what's it like to know him? It must be, he must have this talent almost like you were struck by lightning. And I'm just curious, you have a very signature style, but you don't seem to stay necessarily in the same medium. You've gone from gaffer tape to nuts to milk cartons to cereal boxes, and I'm just wondering, can you talk to us a little bit about not so much the inspiration of what you're creating, but what it is you're creating with? What is it like to look through your eyes and see that's a material to work with and create with?
Oh, that's interesting. I literally have always been able to do this from the time I was little. And I just thought it was everybody could kind of do it, you draw people and do stuff like that. But I was watching this documentary, this really good documentary on Temple Grandin. Did anybody see that? It's the best documentary where she can sort of totally relate to cows, and then she comes up with this whole awesome, humane way to work with cows and whatnot. Halfway through the movie, I was like, oh my God, I am Temple Grandin. I'm not autistic, but I'm artistic. And literally, it's just something that I have, and I can literally just approach something and ideas will come into my head. You got to listen to the voices in your head. If something in your head is telling you to get up and paint a leopard pattern on a banana because brown bananas kind of look leopard, just do it. Go and do it. Don't be oh, that's crazy, or worried that your wife is watching you paint bananas, or just go and do it and try to get it out there, because the next thing you know, it'll be a full-page picture in 17 magazine, and then the next thing you know, it'll be a picture on your Instagram that gets 2,000 likes, and it's a banana painted to look like a cheetah.
So I just want to tap into that sort of genius brain of yours. There's no funnier person to text with. There's no funnier person to text with than Donald. You can say one word, and he sends exactly what you wish you had thought about it, but funnier. So I just want to do a little rapid fire with you. Because I know all you're thinking about right now is ice pelts. He's here, but he's Paris.
Sarah Collette is a very scary lady.
He's heading to Paris.
Will you guys call her and tell her if I don't get out?
So I'm going to say a few things, and you're going to tell me exactly what comes to mind.
We're going full improv here.
Full improv. Well, you wore the yellow pants, so you're halfway there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, the internet dress wars.
The internet dress wars.
And what color? What color did you see?
I would say my favorite thing was I just saw a post. It was Michael Jackson when he was little, and he's in a blue shirt, and it says "I see black and blue," and then there's a picture of him older, and he's in gold, and it says "I see white and gold." I thought that was good.
Okay. So you're a big fan of Wes Anderson.
Yes.
A lot of people are saying the new Gucci collection was Wes Anderson inspired. Have you seen the Gucci collection, and what are your thoughts?
I saw the Gucci collection, but what I thought was the colors in the Prada collection were so Wes Anderson, it was like unbelievable. So I would shift that over. The Prada colors, it was practically the hotel. Like it was in the beginning of the hotel. She had that on a big screen when she was designing that collection for sure.
I was getting out of the taxi, and the number one trending thing on Facebook right now is Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were at LAX with their baby. Thoughts?
He's Canadian.
So that's exciting.
He's full-on Canadian.
The Apple Watch.
Okay, the Apple Watch, like, what is it? The best thing about Instagram was I got to hang out with will.i.am, who had his own smartwatch that he just developed. That was awesome. The Apple Watch, do I have to buy any more Apple products? Like, it's just too much. I can't throw out the boxes. It's, like, too much.
Okay, the Kardashians have signed on for another 4 years on E.
Okay, guys, this is what you need to do when you get back to your computers. Google whale rock, okay? Google whale rock and read about what the Kardashians have up their sleeve next. You will not believe it. This is world domination.
After this broadcast.
After this broadcast.
Okay, do you look at Snapchat for content?
No, Snapchat is Instagram farting. It happens, it lingers, and it's gone, and it's not that pleasant.
Lena Dunham's Eloise documentary.
I'm still kidding over the fact that Lena Dunham and her boyfriend are doing full-on, like, aerodynamic poses. Like, have you seen those gym poses where she balances on top of his feet? That's spectacular. Eloise, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And finally, Lady Gaga on American Horror Story.
Lady Gaga on American Horror Story was basically Lady Gaga plunging into that icy river. Did you see that? That was like a horror story.
Okay, finish these 5 sentences, and then we're going to take some questions.
Okay.
Okay, my sister, who's obsessed with your Instagram,
Yes.
says, as is everybody, said, do you ever go to the bathroom? So the first thing you do in the morning is?
The first thing I do in the morning is ramp up on coffee, and I literally start drawing.
What time of the day is that?
4 o'clock.
Wow. When I need to get inspired, I?
Look on my phone.
When I need to turn the inspiration off,
I never turn it off.
My wife wishes I would just...
Turn it off.
My next dream collaboration would be with, and I would use what?
Jeremy Scott, and I would try to use a computer and be more hard edge.
Okay, well, thank you, Donald.
Oh, thank you, Ariel.
So are we going to open the questions up to the audience, correct?
Hey, thanks for being here. I like the yellow pants. As somebody who's had a lot of success on social media, I was curious what your approach to building an audience was. Did you just create things and then it appeared, or did you really try to put yourself out there? Could you just speak to that?
Yeah, I have a thing, and when I talk to kids in college, I have this thing, and it's called shooting spider webs at people. You want to be able to have as many spider webs shot out because you can be pretty strategic about who you approach and how you can sort of like get the attention of people. It's actually pretty strategic. You just sort of go after people you admire in a positive, friendly way and just try to shoot a web at them. And then what you'll find is you'll pull all these webs, and the next thing you know, you're just propelled. It's like the easiest thing. And it can be so much as just complimenting people. Even really busy, talented designers like to be complimented. It's like a very, very simple thing. And even people who you would think aren't sort of like plugged into what like the public is concerned about, they really are. And you'd be surprised at the number of people that tell me they follow me, but that don't appear to be following me, you know? The other thing too is, for me, what works is to be positive. I'm a pretty positive person. So just stay positive, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you walk the line between shooting spider webs and not being stalkery.
Oh, and not being super.
Because I've given
stalkery?
similar advice to people who've asked how to use social media, and I said, there's no barrier, right? So you can
Right.
create conversations with people who you
Right.
would normally not meet, and sometimes it could become creepy.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
I think you just have to go slow and don't ask too fast. Never ask. Just give. Do stuff, do favors, don't ever ask for anything. The minute you ask for something, the whole thing's over. But just sort of like push out, do things that are positive and upbeat, and also draw people so they're taller and thinner than they actually are.
That's why I showed up.
That is another thing that's key. Flattery.
Hello. I have two questions. The first one is, well, it's not a question. Yes, it is. Can the both of you speak to failure and what it means to you? I feel like it's part of the cultural lexicon right now. And then the second question I have is, what's the app that you wish you had at this current moment?
So Ariel and I kind of failed together on something that was sort of interesting because it wasn't so much that we failed, it was that we were too early. We were doing a magazine that was synced up to the internet. It was called Cargo, and it was very, very early, and the technology couldn't keep up with us. So it was interesting how we sort of dealt with that. And the way we dealt with the technology not being able to keep up with us is we had an art show. Ariel produced an art show for me, and instead of sort of like putting our heads down and like moaning and groaning, we had probably the best turnout of an art show of all time for like people that were just sort of like pulling it out. So it was an opportunity for us to not be commercial, and we went full art and full art world, and it was a blast. We really got it out of our system, and we couldn't have done it had we been struggling with the circulation of this magazine, that basically if it launched today would be a monster success.
Failing with your friend is pretty incredible. I think then also we were not only early in the content, it was really early for me to fail in the position, in my mind. Like I didn't realize at the time that I was actually learning anything. And I think that's really, just personally, I think it's really important to know when you're failing that you're learning so many things. It's hard to have the insight at the moment. I remember thinking, that's it. Like you only get a chance to fail once and then it's over. As opposed to, well, you may have a chance to fail and what's next? So in retrospect, I learned so much. Would I have wanted to have failed still if I had the chance again? Probably not, which is what most people don't say that, but I probably would not have wanted to fail. I probably would have wanted to have Donald as a partner and worked on that magazine for a longer time. The app that I want Instagram to be linkable and shoppable, and I want to be
zoomable, zoom.
and I want to regram without going to another app. I find that really frustrating. Like Donald did this thin picture of me, and I wanted to regram it immediately, but you can't. So that's what I want.
I also there's this awesome app called Scanner app, so it turns your phone into a scanner. I don't know if you guys have it, but if you have to ship art around the world, it's fantastic. I need higher res Scanner app. Because when Turkey is calling for their cover, it's a pain in the ass to have to go and get like high res. High res anything is a drag. Getting high res is a drag.
Hello.
Hi.
I follow you on Instagram, and I know I've noticed you Insta a lot of your family.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do they influence you?
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Mostly, I think art, side by side is a drag. So I use them as sort of like filler. But what happened was, it backfired. And if one more person says, I came for the art and stayed for the kids, I'm going to block you. The thing about it is, it's, again, this is my box, and this is my world, and these are the people that are like, you know, when I'm painting, I'll look down, and there'll be a little tiny one-year-old head right there staring at me, and I'm like, oh, I'll take a picture of that. So it's just sort of like what's happening in my world and what's happening around me, and I just sort of like share it. And it seems to be working, and it makes it more real. And then the other thing, too, is I feel people are really rooting for me because they kind of know my backstory. So it makes the whole thing like more of a, sort of like a group event, you know, like we're all kind of in it together. Read the comments, even from this event, the people were so incredibly nice about it. And then the people that know that Ariel and I are friends were nice about it. It's a very, very nice, cool community that lives on Instagram. Whereas Twitter can get sort of dark and go very sort of super negative and scary, I feel Instagram is a little bit like Canada in technology. Like everybody's nice for the most part, you know?
Hi, Donald.
Hey, how are you?
I'm a big fan of yours.
Yeah, I
I've
know.
met you. I was wondering, how would you define creativity? Because you're a very creative individual.
Again, the thing about creativity is you can't think about it. You just need to listen to the voices in your head. And then the other thing, too, is don't fight the medium. If you're trying to do like a very, very serious face and you have like runny paint, don't make a serious face. Make a runny face. Don't fight the medium. Then you stay on top of the game, and then people react to the fact that you're on top of the medium, believe it or not. Don't fight your medium and listen to the voices in your head.
Was there a medium that you tried that you were really attracted to that just completely didn't work?
Yeah, photography, camera photography drove me crazy. iPhone photography I love, but the whole idea of camera photography or computer, anything computer designy, like that kind of stuff I don't really enjoy as much.
Because you don't have the training in it?
I just like using my hands. I really like using my hands, and I think people like to see a person's hand in something. People are more blown away by a walnut that's made to look like Pharrell than if I manage to get an awesome photograph of Pharrell. Do you know what I mean? It's just, for me, this is my thing.
How you doing? I'm
Hey.
just curious if you had any funny stories from someone you worked with that was famous or...
The old like funny famous people stories. Well, this is a good one. My wife's name is Kim, and we were at this very small party in LA, and it was a violet gray party, and somehow Kim Kardashian ended up at this party, and there were so many celebrities there. I keep calling my wife. I keep saying Kim, 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 and she keeps turning around. I was like, no, not you, not you. So. That I thought was pretty funny, that I was actually trying to avoid her at a party.
Well, on
That's the only one I can really give away.
The other Kim story. Well, we hope you make it off to Paris. Okay.
Right.
Follow Donald at Donald Robertson. Everyone here is probably following you already.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you for joining us wherever you are today. And Donald, what is the next medium?
Eggs.
Eggs, from nuts to eggs.
Eggs.
Thank you so
Get
much.
ready.